back to Film on High Reviews. Today's a bit of a first for us. We're going to be reviewing a film that was actually requested by someone in the comments. Today we're going to be talking about the 1987 film Extreme Prejudice, directed by Walter Hill, starring Nick Nolte, Powers Booth, Maria Conchita Alonso, and Michael Ironside. Set in a small Texas town on the Mexican border, the film follows the exploits of a Texas Ranger named Jack Bentine, who is trying to take down a drug lord named Cash Bailey, who was formerly his best friend, and who they're also involved in a bit of a love triangle. The woman that Jack is currently in a relationship with was formerly with Cash, and as well as that, there's also a bit of a subplot involving a small unit of soldiers who are referred to as the zombie unit, because they're all officially dead in military records, but are kind of here pulling their own little covert op. And the two stories converge for a very thrilling and bloody climax. So, what did you think of Extreme Prejudice?
Well, there's a lot to unpack here, but
Yeah.
first off, it's okay, you know? It's an okay movie.
It's a good example of like a solid kind of 80s action flick. Like, it definitely has some meat to it. It has like more blood and more, like, it doesn't feel sanitized like a lot of the modern day action film does. It has that sense of reality and groundedness to it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the film owes a very obvious debt to a lot of other films that came before it. Most obviously, The Wild Bunch. Like, in a lot of ways, this movie's kind of a big homage to The Wild Bunch, specifically the ending.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities to it, where, especially on the Ironside side.
Yeah, those characters, they're kind of like the Wild Bunch, just these kind of, ragged old soldiers.
And the way they're presented, it's, they all have a bit of personality to them, so you get to distinguish them enough. But watching a movie from the 80s versus something right now where they would have an ensemble like that, they'd be cracking jokes all the time, but in this one they felt more natural enough that you could believe this was an actual squad.
Yeah, the actors all did a pretty good job, and it contrasts interestingly with the Nick Nolte character, the Jack Bentine character, because he's in some ways kind of a cliched, like, Western badass, like, badass gunslinging hero who believes in morals and justice, and you contrast that with this more kind of shady group of guys. And then we have Cash Bailey, played by Powers Booth, who I think he's fantastic in this movie, probably my favorite performance. He's in some ways kind of a standard character, like, drug lord, likes to party, violent, that kind of guy, but Powers Booth kind of brings some uniqueness to the character. Like, it's kind of similar to the performance he would give later on in the show Deadwood. And the fact that, the main character and Cash have this connection where they used to be best friends gives the film a little bit of added depth. I really like those scenes with the two of them where, you can tell that there's still some love there, like, they don't really want to kill each other, but they've kind of been forced into this role. At first, Cash tries to buy Jack off, he tries to tell him, just get on my payroll and we can work together, but Jack's adherence to, the good moral laws, he can't do that, he's too much of a good guy kind of thing. So we have, like, a very clear-cut kind of black and white kind of moral scenario here, but it's still interesting. Just, I'm a sucker for that kind of idea, like the idea of two old friends on different sides of the law. And, the woman, Sarita, I think her name is, she adds, like, a bit more complexity to the thing, although I felt like her character was kind of wasted. Like, Maria Conchita Alonso is a fine actress. She was also in, most notably in Predator 2, where she played the female cop on the squad with Danny Glover. And in this film, she really doesn't have much to do. She, there's a couple scenes where she sings and she has a nice voice and everything, but her character really just nags Nick Nolte a lot, and she's like, I should be with Cash, and it's like, well, then go be with Cash, and then she does, and, it kind of sets up the final confrontation where he has to go rescue his girlfriend kind of thing.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, where this movie makes me question what they were going for, it's just...
It definitely feels a bit muddled at times.
It's the Ironside viewpoint that you could say kind of muddles the whole situation?
Well, because the movie has a bit of an interesting history. It originated from a concept by John Milius, who's a pretty famous screenwriter, most known for Apocalypse Now. And the title of the film, Extreme Prejudice, is even a reference to a line in Apocalypse Now, terminate with extreme prejudice. So John Milius, he originally had this idea, but he didn't really go ahead with it. He did other things instead. So I guess the treatment or whatever eventually ended up in the hands of Walter Hill, who had already kind of made a name for himself as a director with movies like The Warriors and things like that. So the film kind of changed a bit as it went along, and yeah, you have like kind of this mishmash of ideas that don't fully cohere at times. Like, I remember seeing this movie when I was younger, and I even when I saw it as a teenager, I was like, I didn't really get what was going on. Like, now watching it older, I got a better sense of what was going on. But like, yeah, the whole zombie unit thing, like, that's an interesting idea. I like the idea of like this squad of soldiers who are completely just under the radar. Like, they're basically dead. They might as well not even exist, and they're out there pulling these like really shady covert ops, and there is like a twist involving them later on in the film as well. But for a lot of the movie, you're not really sure what they're doing, and the two plots don't really gel that well, so it kind of feels disconnected. Like, they're kind of just, at first their plan is to rob a bank, and you're not really sure why. Like, are they just doing this for their own personal gain, or is there some ulterior motive? And there's a bit of a plot underneath everything, but yeah, it feels like the movie was kind of spinning its wheels at times. Like, they put so much effort into this bank heist that's ultimately a failure, and I feel like maybe they could have done something a bit different or a bit more exciting. And it's especially goofy because the whole reason that their bank heist doesn't go over well is because the two idiots got their fucking getaway cars stuck in the mud, I think, or the sand. It's like, yeah, you guys are really professionals. You're really looking great here.
Yeah. I don't know. Just watching the movie, there's a lot that I could see was taken from other great movies.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of other movies that probably took a lot of inspiration from this movie as well. And my biggest complaint would be that Nick Nolte's character, Jack, never gets shot, injured, or anything like that. Every fight that he's in, he always goes out unscathed. His partner dies, Rip Torn, he dies being kind of like the father figure for Jack, and kind of, used to be there for all of them. But like you mentioned earlier, like, Jack is almost the same age as Rip Torn, so
I know it felt like it. Yeah, it didn't really feel like they were trying to give a sense that Jack was younger and Rip Torn was kind of the older sheriff who'd been there. But yeah, I didn't really get that feeling. But anyway, that's a minor complaint. But yeah, like the Rip Torn character, like, I love me some Rip Torn. He was a great character actor. Rest in peace. But like in this film, his character didn't really add much. Like, I guess you have like the death of the mentor, the friend, and that spurs Jack even further into action, because Jack does have a bit of a moral conundrum going on. Like, again, he's torn between wanting to do the right thing, but also his because he still cares about cash, and he wants to try to resolve the situation as peacefully as he can. So there is like he's ambivalent about it. So when his partner gets killed, that's what really pushes him over the edge. So, it does serve a function for the plot. But yeah, like I said earlier, like, a lot of elements in the film just don't really gel that well together. But it does build up fairly well towards, like, the final climax, which, again, very Wild Bunch inspired.
The climax is pretty cool, and I don't want to say anything more just because it should be just seen to watch. If you just want to watch the climax, it's probably on YouTube as well, but yeah, just watch the movie just so that once you finally watch that, you're kind of like left with, alright, the movie was okay. Like, if it didn't have a badass ending like that, then maybe it would have been put down.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a movie that's really a build-up sort of movie. Like, it's more about building up to the final confrontation and anything, and it's a bit of slow going at times, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. And yeah, like, it's a pastiche movie, like you said. Like, it's a movie that takes elements from a lot of other films like classic westerns and most obviously Peckinpah and kind of throws them all together, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like again, Quentin Tarantino sort of does that. He includes a lot of homages to movies he loves and the way he puts it together. So just on the strength of that, the film kind of works, and I can see why it's enjoyed by a lot of people. It's not a super well-known movie or super well-beloved, like not on the level of Predator or Lethal Weapon or some of the other 80s action films, but it does enjoy like a pretty good reputation. It has a bit of a, I won't necessarily say a cult following, but yeah, like I think for people that like 80s action movies, this one's up there, and the action itself is pretty well shot. Like Walter Hill, he was good at that. He directed a lot of action films in his time, but it definitely doesn't have the same impact as The Wild Bunch, like that Sam Peckinpah thing. Like his film, the way he filmed violence and shootouts really had that impact. This feels maybe a bit more watered down, but at the same time, I like the attention to detail of everything. Like, the soldiers pulling their covert ops, smuggling their weapons in and stuff like that. So yeah, like giving it a more kind of modern, updated feel. It works just on the strength of that. Like it doesn't have the same kind of intensity or emotional impact that The Wild Bunch has, but it has its own kind of fun 80s charm.
Yeah, overall, this movie, I dug it, but it's not the type of movie that I'd watch all the time. Maybe a one done type of thing, but my rating overall for this movie would be a 3 out of 5.
Yeah. I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5 myself. Like, yeah, really good, solid 80s action film. If you're a fan of that kind of genre and you're kind of, disillusioned with the more, because, like a lot of action movies today, I don't want to sound like a snobby hipster or anything, but they just don't hit the same way. Like, they don't have that grime that the older movies had. So, if you're pining for something a bit bloody and fun, but something that also has maybe a bit more depth than the average action film and some good performances from a great cast of actors, this would be worth checking out.
Yeah, check it out at least once, and let us know what you think of it.
Yeah, and check out Walter Hill's other work too. He's done a lot of great films.
All right, catch you later.
Peace.